Hey, what's going on?
Don't worry, buddy.
I'm good. How about you?
Doing good, doing good.
Hey, thanks for joining me. Appreciate this.
Yeah, no problem at all.
How's everybody in your family? Everybody safe, healthy?
Everybody's safe and healthy, and we're learning from home. And I have an age range of kids. I have from 23 to 13. So
Oh, okay.
the three girls, and my son's 13 years old. He's the
Oh,
ball player.
okay.
He's the ball player.
Awesome. And where do you live?
I live on the island of Staten.
Okay. My brother actually lives there, so
Where
I
about?
haven't seen my brother in like 3 months, so
Where does he live?
I think he lives the name of the place, the Irby, I think it's called.
Oh yeah, he lives in that's on the North Shore.
Okay,
In the
cool.
apartments,
Yeah.
yeah.
I'm not really too familiar with like Staten Island. He works in the city. He's a cop, so that's why he lives there for easier commute. So
Mhm. Are you out in Long Island? Where you at?
I'm in Jersey. We're in Jersey.
Okay.
So we're like in the same boat as everybody else, New York, New Jersey area, shut down, not really doing anything. So it's been great to get some people on here, and we got to give credit. We'll get into it in a second. But Johnny Mock, I don't know the relationship between you, Johnny Mock, and Rawlins, but John's a character, and he set this up. So I don't know if what the history is between you and John.
John. I know John a long time. I've been in pro ball now 20 years. So for
Yeah.
me, I met John years ago. We have a lot of the same mutual friends, and especially he was close with St. John's and at Blankmeyer, and Blankmeyer is the manager of the Cyclones,
Yes. Yeah.
but I've been a supporter of Rawlings because in addition to my daytime job, we own a store on Staten Island, Victory Sports. So we've had the sporting goods store for now for about 3 years. So I dealt Rawlings a little bit through that, and John Franco and I we're really tight. We're good friends.
Yes. Yeah, we'll get into that. I read a little bit about that. So yeah, it
Yeah.
seems like you got your hand in a little bit of everything, which is good, but all in the baseball world. So
Yep.
why don't we get into it? Like kind of your early beginnings. What baseball kind of meant to you at an early age. Did you play at an early age? Did you play through high school? Did you play in college? What was it always baseball, or was it any other sports growing up?
Well, growing up, always baseball. As a young kid growing up, I always took on to baseball because my dad was a city worker. Never seen him much. Mom was home, and I was the oldest of the bunch, and I took on to baseball. And baseball was always first love. When I was 5 years old, I remember sitting in my grandmother's house in Sheepshead Bay, Brooklyn, watching the Yankees play the Milwaukee Brewers on TV during the playoffs, and that was the first kind of introduction I had to baseball. And then from there, Bucky Dent was the shortstop, and when I played Little League, I got the white wristbands. Used to wear
Mm,
them. I wanted to be the next Bucky Dent. And then as I got older, just baseball became a passion, more passion. And then I played in high school. I played when I went to college, and then I decided that after my first year of college, I got redshirted my first year too. I said, you know what? Maybe baseball is not the direction for me. I'm a five
mm.
foot nine guy who looks like Tommy Lasorda, and it's not going to work. So let's just go the other direction. So I went to St. Francis College. I took psychology as my major, and my
Mm,
minor was in business. And then after I got done with St. Francis, I went to the Connecticut School of Broadcasting because I thought I would be a broadcaster. But
mm.
when you grew up in Brooklyn with a diction like this and dialect, it's not really, unless I'm doing, the wild world of Italian sports, it's not really. But I actually, during that time in the beginning, I was able to, I coached high school baseball at Bishop Ford. And then back then, I seen a void that we had here in New York City. It was before training was really popular and before all these guys are making tons and tons of money now. We opened up on Third Avenue in Brooklyn was John Franco's Indoor Sports Center,
Mm.
and I created an off-season program because I knew you couldn't work with high school players in a formal setting, but if I was able to employ the people that worked, players from the minor leagues and my friends who were coaches. So I grew up during the time where I grew up too. A lot of the players were getting signed to minor league contracts from New York City. I played against Manny Ramirez. I played against all those big guys that grew up here in the city. And my close friend was John Halama, went to Bishop Ford. He pitched in the major leagues for a bit. And then the Galante family from Staten Island. So we said, I had the concept of doing a 20-week program for kids, having them come in, learning from the pros, and not from the high school coach, because
Mm.
I didn't believe that I should be teaching anything in baseball if I never stepped foot on a pro field. So I was just kind of the promoter and coordinator of the whole thing. And as time went along, um, the goal was always to work in professional baseball.
Mm.
And I wanted to be in scouting, and everybody wants to be a scout. So that was the key. That was the initial stuff. And then when the program started, we had like the first time we put it out, it was like 20 weeks for $100. And then we had 900 phone calls, which was legit amount of phone calls. It's I'm not even making the number up. It was over. I remember getting all the phone calls. And
Were
so,
you guys the only game in town at that time? Was it like the only? Okay.
yeah, we were the first. I like to say the Long Ball Club, which it's called. The Long Ball Club, it stood for All Year Long Baseball.
Mm.
We were the only people doing training at the time and developing programs and teaching kids the proper way and getting them prepared for their next season. And it wasn't because of travel baseball, it was because you wanted to get them ready for high school. Or if it was younger kids, it was kind of creating that fun atmosphere for them to kind of have a place to go during the winter and play, but then also meet celebrities and former players. And
Mm.
so I kind of put a promotional spin on it too. And then the Hall of Fame got involved, and the Hall of Fame then dubbed us the Boy Scouts of baseball, and
Mm. That's awesome.
it was pretty cool. And then we had that, so we had Brooklyn, Staten Island, Queens, and then before you knew it, we started doing some high school programming, where if you didn't play baseball but you liked the game of baseball, I had to deal with Tops, and Tops would do a baseball card thing with them, and
Mm.
so it was anything to promote the game and getting the engagement of people to watch and to participate.
Awesome. That sounds cool. That I could see kind of where your career went from there. So how do you get to be, how do you get a job with the Brooklyn Cyclones? Because that's obviously kind of what you're known for right now. How does that come about? Do they find you through all these different promotions you're running, and how does that work?
So it was strange because in 1997 I was at the baseball winter meetings in New Orleans, and I was down there for the job fair because every year minor league baseball, in Major
Yes.
League
Yeah.
Baseball, they have the winter meetings, and then you have the job fair. So I attended because someone had recommended that I go down and
This is your first one that you go to.
yeah, 1997. I was I was just out of college and doing. I was like in my 20s, and someone said to me, with a person in baseball, told me go down to the winter meetings and see what you could do. So I went down there like everybody else, put the suit on, the backpack with the resumes, and I started talking to everyone. Next thing it's more of a social setting when you're in the winter meeting, so it's a lot casual.
Mm.
I was offered a job by the Dodgers to work Double A in San Bernardino, California, and I called my wife on the phone. I got married when I was young, and I said, "Listen, got the job." She's like, "Where are we going?" I said, "San Bernardino. We're gonna move 3,000 miles." I said, "For $1,000 a month," and she said,
Oh.
"No way." Uh, so that was the beginning where we didn't work. But then what happened was at that time I networked, and there was someone that I did meet when I was down there. A couple of years passed by. The Long Ball Club starts. As the Long Ball Club starts, Queens Kings were in St. John's at the time.
Mm.
So someone called up someone who was working with me and said, "Hey, listen, Gary, they want to give us tickets to go to a minor league game in Queens. You want to go?" Said, "Sure, yeah, I get the tickets. We'll bring the kids. We'll do a group outing." When we get there, someone says to me, "Oh, the guy wants to meet you." So as I'm walking, behind the trailer at St. John's, guy comes over to me and he looks at me, he goes, "Hey, listen, thanks for coming out." I brought like 400 people to the game, and so for $2 a piece, which was great.
Mm.
So everybody went to the game. But I looked at him. I said, "Wait, time out. I know you." And he goes, I had his card. We wound up having a beer together in New Orleans, and next thing you know, it's the guy I wound up working with the last 20 years with. So that's how I met, Steve Cohen, who I work with in Brooklyn. He and I, we met back then. And then when the Lone Ball Club was going, that's when Queens Kings became the Cyclones, and they were looking for director of community relations. And we were in contact.
That was your first job there?
Yeah, I was director of community relations for the team. Um,
Awesome. And what is that job kind of? It was a no-brainer to take that job because it's fairly
uh,
local. It's in New York, like family, everything kind of looked good, like it was a no-brainer.
yeah, well, it wasn't well, it was kind of a tough decision at the time because I was coaching high school baseball. I was doing the baseball stuff I wanted to do, but I also had a good job with the city. I was
Mm.
working for the city of New York, and I was working with the transit authority doing payroll. And I decided that if I take this job, it's gonna be a change. It's gonna be a life change for me and my family. And wife and I, we sat down, but I hated the job at the transit. Hated it
Mm.
or anything. I took a $35,000 pay cut and went into baseball. I didn't know I'd be in baseball for 20 years, but it's worked out pretty good.
That's awesome. That's the connections, man, and life changing opportunity. So, what is that like? Kind of your first job title there, director of communications. What does that job entail? What are job responsibilities? Anybody listening to this,
Yeah.
that's like, hey, I want to work in, the dream. Oh, I want to work in baseball, some capacity, Major League Baseball, minor league baseball. Would you suggest going to the winter meetings? Because that's kind of like still a thing. Would you say, yeah, you got to go to, obviously you got to finish school, you got to do your stuff, but go to those winter meetings. I made some great connections there.
I think everything you do in sports, regardless of what sport it is, or if you're a person who aspires to be a coach or a manager or someone who works within a game, first you have to know what you want to do. That's
Mm,
number one. I get a million people a year who send me resumes and call me up and give me advice. I want to work in sports. I want to work in baseball. And I'm like, okay, what do you want to do?
mm,
You have to know your mindset and where you want to go. But the place to start off with to begin a network, and nowadays it's a little bit different because you have stuff like this.
yes.
You have the Zooms, you have the Instagram lives, you have LinkedIn and social media, and the beginning I do teach a class at LIU in downtown Brooklyn on uh, on sales and communications, and one of my classes is about making sure that you get the low hanging fruit, the connections that you make locally, well then you could get into a job that you want to, but you have to volunteer your time. Like I did high school baseball first. I did camps and clinics. I did the stuff that wasn't pretty in the beginning,
Mm.
kind of get the resume that I needed to get into baseball.
That's awesome. That's awesome. Yeah, this is uh since the coronavirus happened, this has been maybe the one positive outcome. The connections that I've made, speaking to guys like you and other people on here, I have a nice little bit of Rolodex to kind of go back to when this is all over. So, so what does that job entail, director of communications?
Yeah.
Anybody listening to this, what were your job responsibilities that you had to take care of day one
My job responsibility was to make sure that everybody knew who the Brooklyn Cyclones were,
there? Mm,
and also to let them understand what minor league baseball is about. A lot of people don't understand what minor league baseball is. Um, they think it's a multi-million-dollar business,
mm,
where there's some teams. Some teams they are. It's a small business. That's what it is. It's really a
yeah.
small business. So my job is to go in the community. I did baseball clinics for kids. I did stuff with the hospitals, the visits. I did all the beginning stuff in the community PR world, where it was just making connections. And I had it pretty easy because when a team gets announced that they're coming back to Brooklyn to play baseball after the Brooklyn Dodgers left,
Yes.
then it was kind of a big deal. And I tell people that all the time. You know, we they we were treated like celebrities, which was nuts. I'm a Brooklyn guy who grew up in Brooklyn, just loving the game of baseball. But if you call the hey, it's Gary from the Cyclones, oh my God, you thought we were like, there was going to Saturday Night Live with the guys and going to, so it's like, where are we? But it was kind of a big deal because we had such a great relationship with the borough and the game that people. So my job basically was to just do government stuff, political, working with politicians. Community outreach was a big thing of mine, and I still till today I never lost that. I continue doing that because it's important to who we are as an organization. And I always say, if you work for an organization or a company, the brand that you wear on you becomes you. And if you don't treat it that way, then you got to think about what you want to do.
Absolutely. So Brooklyn, I mean, I've been to games there. It's a great atmosphere. It's different than going to any other like these other minor league stadiums. Not that I feel bad for them, but like they don't really have a draw. There's not really. I mean, it seems like Brooklyn seats a little bit more than your normal minor league stadium. You guys have obviously the boardwalk there. Nathan's
Mhm.
is there, so it's a cool atmosphere. Is all that stuff kind of like positives and pluses? Is it easy to kind of promote? Come to Brooklyn because you could go to the baseball game, you could go to the boardwalk, you could go to the original Nathan's. It's very nostalgic going to a Brooklyn Cyclones game.
I think that is it's a good location. I always, after learning about the industry over the years too, location of where you put a stadium is really important. And you could see it throughout the minor leagues. If you look in certain areas where you look at the attendance numbers, how they have varied. In smaller towns like upstate New York, and they do very well because there is no other attraction.
Mm,
When you're here in New York City, the having the boardwalk and the parachute and the landscape, yeah, of course it helps to it because it adds excitement. And I always tell people, I remember as a kid growing up going to a major league stadium, when you walk behind home plate to the field and you're seeing it for the first time, you're like, wow. I remember the first time we walked up the steps in Brooklyn, and then you see the way it looks.
Mm.
That to me has always been the best selling point for the stadium itself, because from the outside you can't see the park. You don't know what it looks like on the inside. And some of these parks, they have no imagination. I think when they built the stadium in Brooklyn, the vision was to make the motif like Coney Island. That's why you had the big circles on top of the
Yeah.
park. You could see the ballpark circles at nighttime when we're not playing, which lit up. Um, but I thought it definitely helps. But I think in today's, well, forget about the pandemic, but before the pandemic, it's the involvement that we're having from communities and where we serve. Every community is different now than it was 20 years ago in Brooklyn.
Mm.
More gentrified. People who are not Brooklynites, really.
Mm.
If you talk to Brooklynite people, we have a pure passion for the borough. You talk to a Johnny Franco, he'll tell you. Talk to Lee Mazzilli and those guys. Those are the guys that that we kid around about it all the time. But there's something about Brooklyn people who, when you grow up in the borough and then you have a chance to do what you love in the industry,
Mm.
it's even 10 times better.
Mm.
So,
That's awesome, man.
yeah.
So I also read that then you leave Brooklyn, right? So what was like that decision to go to Staten Island, right? The Staten Island Yankees
Yeah.
assistant GM.
Yep.
I mean, how does that opportunity come about? And is that a tough decision? Because it sounds like obviously you're back in Brooklyn, but like the
Right.
love for Brooklyn in the beginning, what made you go to Staten Island?
I was at the time in 2004. I was going to scouts. I went to scout school, and
Yeah.
I went through scout school through MLB. And while I was in scout school, I received a call. Hey, listen, we have an opportunity. We would like to bring you over. And it was weird. I said, well, listen, I'm busy doing this right now. Call my organization. You talk to them first.
Mm.
Give you the approval. Then we'll go from there. Um, when I came back from scout school, little did I know they didn't call my organization. So I kind of walked into a firing pit, and I was like, oh,
Oh.
this is not good. Um, so I told them I had an opportunity and everything else. And I think that when you're in a position where certain people are, when people who work with you, if they have an opportunity, you have to let them go do it.
Mm.
Um, as much as they would love to stay where they are, but you have to expand who you are too. And I think at that point in time, it was a good time for me to kind of walk away. I didn't want to. I admit this to everybody. I cried on the concourse before I left,
Mm.
because when you build something from the ground up and you're part
Yeah.
of it, it's it's really for me. I mean, the Italian way of thinking, we're just too emotional on everything that we do. But my passion was about staying in Brooklyn. But we went to Staten Island, and it was a great actually learning experience, because in Brooklyn was so popular. It wasn't, things just came naturally in Brooklyn.
Yeah.
When I went to Staten Island, it was a little bit different. It was really,
Mm.
we
A-
had
And
to
and
adjust.
also that so you get the assistant GM. Like, how is that job? What does that job now entail? Because that obviously sounds a little bit more responsibilities. And how was that different than the job you were doing in Brooklyn?
Well, it was different. It was overseeing all the sales departments.
Mm.
All the ticket sales, sponsorship sales, and I was overseeing community relations. I would work closely with the GM at the time, Jane. We would work together. I would do the baseball stuff too, in terms of housing for players. Um, but it was more or less coming up with the business plan and promotional plan for the organization. And that's what I was doing mostly, because I think people in the minor leagues, assistant GMs normally work with the farm directors and the team. And then the other part of the job is you have to do the business and promotions. And in the major leagues, it's not like that. In
Mm.
the minor leagues, you wear many hats. So that's what the job was different. I had a little bit more responsibility, but making ends meet and revenue was the first thing. In Brooklyn, I didn't have to think about it the first time because it was so
Mm.
prolific. But Staten Island, I had to work, and it was about relationships and getting sponsors to sponsor the team and make them understand that the Yankees had an investment on Staten Island that was they should be part of.
Mm. That's very interesting. So then also you go back to Brooklyn.
Hmm.
And that must have been a no-brainer when that came about, because it sounds like you were really, really upset to leave. And like, was that
Yeah.
obviously, how does that come about going back to Brooklyn?
How it came about was we were uh, the real story was uh, the people who bought the Staten Island Yankees. A new group was coming in,
Okay.
and I noticed their way of doing things wasn't. what I thought would be successful on Staten
Mm.
Island. You know, minor league baseball is about community, and if you don't really know the community well enough, and if you're an outsider who buys a team, and a lot of people do that, they buy teams, and then what happens is they think they know the area, but every community is different in the way they buy things and the way they perceive an organization. Staten Island is a unique place. That's to say for sure. And I didn't, some of the philosophies I did agree with. I helped them write some programs, but then it came a certain point in time where I felt that it wouldn't work out well. So we had a mutual agreement that we shook hands and I walked away. And then it was at the winter meetings in that during that time, and I had seen some people from the organization, from the Cyclones and from the Mets ownership, and we had a conversation. When I came back from the winter meetings, I had a phone call because I was doing work with the New York Penn League at the time, helping them just on a freelance type stuff, and um, it just came back. Hey, listen, you want to come back? I'm like, ownership like to see you come back too, and I did.
That's
And
awesome, man. And was the job very similar to what you had to do in Staten Island? Same type of job responsibilities, or was it with Brooklyn? There was maybe a little bit more type of
well,
responsibilities.
for me in Brooklyn, it was going back into the role that I had once, which
Mm.
was being the community guy, but also on the business side of things now was kind of to let's concentrate more on the bottom line. Let's concentrate, like, let's get our sales team together. Let's kind of really do great promotions and stuff.
So,
Uh,
what type of promotions does Brooklyn like typically run? I mean, are you guys doing a promotion every night that somebody's at the ballpark, or is it kind of like how do you pick and choose the different promotions that you guys are doing?
well, our staff now. We have a great young staff, and Billy Horner, who's our director of communications, he comes up with a lot of great things. And I think the way when people will have, front offices sometimes, you got to go by the temperature of how old they are and if they have kids.
Mm.
Billy has young kids, so he comes up with all great younger promotions. And very culty in the way of like Seinfeld's been a big night for us. We do Seinfeld
Mm.
once a year. That's Billy's baby, and he's done great with that. But the promotions that we do, um, we all kind of pitch in on those, and we map out the calendar and we say, okay, what's going to work best, and we look at the time of the year too, because time of the year, like the end of in June, we have the end of school, so we do all the school fundraising programs, and then we move into the next part, which is July, which is the 4th of July, which is in Coney Island, always big anyway. And then
Yes, yes.
from that point forward, we look at the days that we could really need a boost, or if we put a promotion in that would work well to attract fans in. Because it's not about, in the minor leagues, as we know, it's not about the game; it's about
Mm.
everything else. And so that's what we concentrate on mostly. And whether it be bringing in people from WWE to do autograph signings, or uh, some some celebrities, like when we did Sandlot a couple of years ago,
Mm.
we had Chauncey Leopardi Squints. He came in, and then we had the other guy who played the Hambino. He came in too.
Mm.
So we kind of stay trendy, and I think that our staff in Brooklyn has created most of those great promotions. This year we were on the docket to do Friends, and
Mm.
now we can't. But it's but it just depends upon the schedule and what we need to do.
That's awesome. That's awesome. So is it easy to get people to Brooklyn, like get fans there? I mean, I've been to games and every time I was there, I've been there I think 3 times. I usually go in the summer with my grandpa and it's kind of like he makes me drive him there and stuff like that. It seems like that's kind of I don't know if that's the type of person you're getting, like that historic type of person that's like wants to take their family to the Brooklyn because like he remembers baseball when it was being played in Brooklyn. Do you guys usually sell out on like a weekend, like a Friday, Saturday, Sunday? Is that in the heat of the season?
I would say the word sellout is kind of like in the beginning of time we would sell out a lot,
Yeah.
but then like now going forward, there's always tickets. I always say there's always tickets available. Always tickets available. We have standing room and stuff, but we do get nice sized crowds, um, and it's been consistent, and it's been good.
That's cool. That's cool. Also, you were, from what I've read, very instrumental in kind of the renaming of the stadium, right? Like, how does that happen? How does that, like, just like kind of the right fit to kind of rename the stadium?
Yeah, we were at the time we had the first sponsor. They had a business transition, and so it was a changing company. And then I guess when we had MCU, they were at the time they were a perfect fit. at that time, I think everything has to be broken down into decades of what you do.
Yeah.
Uh, and for the last 10 years, MCU served as a good partner because they were about the city. Their fabric was of the frontline people, uh, cops, firemen, nurses. So when you're a community ballpark in the minor leagues, it's to have a partner like that. It made a lot of sense. And so I had a relationship with them before because for many years, for 19 years now, I've been doing the FDNY NYPD baseball game.
Mm.
So MCU was a kind of a partner with them. I met them through there, and then the next thing you know, became friends. And it was in jest, and I was like, "Hey, listen, what MCU Park? What do you think?" And like, "Oh, okay, how much?" I'm like, "What? What, really?" And like, it was a day before Thanksgiving that it happened, but it was the coolest thing in the world. And it's one of those things when you work in professional sports or you work, I don't care what business you work in. It could be doing podcasts, it could be doing whatever it is. But once you get that big person, you're like, "Oh, wow, this is cool." Um, and that was a great fit.
That's awesome, man. That's a great story. It seems like you have a lot of different connections, a lot of different people you know. And I want to talk about the Borough Cup because I really don't. Before of this, I didn't know what the Borough Cup was. Anybody listening to this or watching this, you want to explain what the Borough Cup is? And I know John Franco's involved, and how does that come about? Because that must be a story in itself, how that the Borough Cup develops.
Well, I think for the most part, one thing here in New York City, I've always been part of promoting youth baseball.
Mm,
To me, it's been extremely important, whether it be for the team's purpose, for the Cyclones, or just on a personal level, having the involvement of kids playing the game.
mm,
And I always said 20 years ago when I started working in the industry was, if I work in a front office and if I don't promote the game properly to youth, we'll never fill our seats one day. And that's
mm,
the truth. And it's hitting us even more now as are getting older, as I'm getting older, is that you see the drop off in kids playing. One of the things that we always looked at too was how could we help all these organizations, whether it be the New York Pro Scouts Association, the Greater New York Sandlots Alliance, but how could we create something that would, really make New York City baseball go?
mm.
Um, and my whole thing was we had a baseball summit once, and me and Johnny, along with Tom Braswell, who was working with MLB at the time, Ed Blankmeyer, Willie Randolph, and we all said, every state does things differently. In New York City, we don't. Everybody's kind of still against each other doing that stuff. And so we said we wanted to bring the city together.
Mm.
And at the time, Craig Carton, who was with WFA at the time, we were sitting down, and Johnny and I were doing a lot of youth baseball stuff to begin with. Um, and I always call John like the New York Sun. He's the son of New York City baseball, John. And he's been the guy who is, Franco has always been there during like times like 9/11.
Mm.
He's always been there for the kids.
Yeah.
He knows what it was to grow up in the Sandlots. So we were sitting down at Spumoni Gardens having pizza in Brooklyn, and I told these guys, I said, listen, my concept is I want to create something that's going to be people who don't have to leave New York City. Why
Mm.
should why should they have to travel to
Georgia and yeah.
Georgia and go to Ripken and go to baseball heaven all the time
Mm.
when I know this? And the experience that I had the last few years with my son playing travel baseball and USA baseball and all this stuff, with him going and playing, why during a travel game I'm traveling all the way to Georgia to play the guy who lives around the corner from me. Like it's the Titans playing the prospects. Like time out. We live like 2 minutes apart from each other, but we got to go all the way to Georgia to play this game. It doesn't make sense. So the Borough Cup became. We wanted to have all 5 borough presidents involved, which
Mm.
I went to them. But first, before rolling it out, the concept I passed it by everybody at MLB, because I wanted to make sure that if we did a program, we had the backing from people.
Mm.
And not because we wanted, it wasn't about the making money part of it. It was a legacy project for people like a John, who, playing Major League Baseball for 21 years, leaving a legacy behind for kids. At the time Carton was a fan and Carton's doing the radio thing, and we had a great, voice behind it. He had young kids playing. And for myself, has always been, you want to leave something that's going to benefit baseball.
Mm.
We got the blessings. So all 5 borough presidents got behind it. We went to the Players Association, we went to MLB. They love the concept and idea. We bring it together, and then the next thing you know, the Yankees and the Mets get involved.
Mm.
Uh, from the Yankees' point of view, they loved it and they wanted to. They had that agreement with Craig at the time because the Yankees were the fan. but they wanted to host the older kids at the Yankee Stadium playing, which I thought was
Yeah, that's fantastic.
no other tournament in this country has that. So
Mm.
that's why I think it was pretty cool. And then at the younger level, we have an agreement because there's a turf field in Brooklyn, and plus it's my home. The young kids get to play in Brooklyn on a field. So and the way it culminates is all 5 boroughs play within, and then we do cross borough. And it's what's become really great with it is that the kids from all 5 boroughs now get to know each other,
Mm.
and it's kind of creating that unity that we want in baseball and here in the city. And that was the real crux behind it is how do we get these coaches and kids to play together here in the city, because the talent level is going to be what it is. It's gotten a lot better over the years. Um, but how do we get everybody on these fields playing? And it worked out well. The first year we had 150 teams that signed up
Wow.
for it. We don't overprice it. We keep it at because the Borough Cup after our second year became we put it in a nonprofits
Mm.
section because we want to show people that this is not about what other people are doing right now. And I think going of this is going to be very helpful because a lot of people right now, if you're the average mom and dad right now and you don't have a job right now, you lost some money because of this
Mm.
whole thing. You know, when you're really going back to work full time, for a kid to spend between $3,000 to $10,000 to play travel baseball, it's tough. So
Yeah.
we put the Borough Cup, and so Zach Bright, who is my director of the Borough Cup, he's really great. He was working with me as an intern in Brooklyn, and now he runs the day to day for the Borough Cup for us. And Ben Franceschi, we have an executive director who is our lawyer, and he oversees all the stuff that we do too. So they've been, leading the charge too. But what I do mostly with them is I sit down and create plans. And we had a call yesterday about how we're going to ease baseball back into New York City.
Mm.
Those are things that I'm working with. Like after this call today, I have a call with the commissioner for the PSAL for the public schools and the Catholic high schools. My involvement, I have to. The Cyclones is my job, and I love them, and I love the Mets organization for giving me the opportunity. But my real thing is I'm working with the New York Pro Scouts now, helping them build their media presence and giving them a platform. We're working with creating New York Sandlot Alliance. That's every team that plays within the 5 boroughs. It's all the baseball people in New York City from MLB down to the T-ball guy. And that's what we're doing is really trying to pull everything together over the next few months to to when we do return for baseball here in the city. There'll be a plan in place with trying to ease people back into playing, what's going to make people feel comfortable playing the game. I even reached out to MLB last week about, what's your protocol? What are you doing for youth programming?
Mm.
And with Tony Regans and I, we have an open dialogue because of the Borough Cup and the things we do here in the city. And he explained to me, the guidelines got to be followed like everything else. And because I was listening to my son was on a Zoom call with his travel team, and one of the organizations travel, I guess, people they wanted to open up June 1st and play, and
Mm. I don't think so.
well, don't give any false hope to these kids. Number one, because it's bad enough they're not playing.
Yes.
No,
Yeah.
number two, it's time that people who work within the game, who actually promote the game, and who make a living doing the game,
Mm.
we all have to get on the same page now because it's important that when baseball comes back,
Yes. Yeah.
that we do it correctly, and not because of the money.
Mm.
Money always follows good people. That's why I say it. If you're a good person, money will follow you. If you're one of those guys who just wants to make the quick buck, then that's, God bless in the future. But I think you need to really look at things. And so the Borough Cup fills the void for summertime here in New York for teams that can't travel to the big places.
That's awesome. I have a couple questions. We could talk about it. Yeah, we. So the Borough Cup. When was that? When was that founded? When did that? Was the first Borough Cup?
2014.
2014. And when does that? Like, when does that take place? Like the time of year?
So what we like to do is because there's a large section of kids that we want to have part of it, and most of them are little league baseball too.
Okay.
So how do you balance it between the travel coach who tells you can't play in a tournament, the little league coach who says you have all stars, and how do you make everything coexist?
Mm.
Um, so what we've been doing is when Little League season ends, which is the beginning of July,
Mm.
then the Borough Cup kicks in. And the way we propose it to a lot of people too is instead of, if certain kids don't make the All Stars, because All Stars, and I know Staten Island is tremendous, it's the greatest
Yeah.
thing in the world, but I'm not sure of the other places, but but Staten Island, they won't let their kids play in the Borough Cup if they're All Stars because they're playing in All Stars to go to Williamsport, and that's limited,
Mm.
which I respect
Mm.
100%. But what about the other kids who are not the kids playing All Stars? What
They
about the other
should. Yeah.
kids? Yeah, then keep these kids playing. So we've been working on that for the last 2 years. It looks like it's going to come to fruition going into next year, because I've spoken with Little League administrators and directors about the benefits. And so you have Little League. And for travel teams, for certain travel teams, they're sick and tired of traveling to places for 2 days to go win a plaque. And they just want to have development for their kids, and they want to have a good tournament. And when you could play in a stadium for the what we call the city championship, which is in New York City, should be the biggest one, and it has become. And you get to play at the ballpark in Coney Island, and you get to play at Yankee Stadium. Um, that's pretty special.
Yeah, that is.
I kind of I try to be as humble about it as possible. But when the New York Yankees give you, and New York, the Yankees and the Mets give you an opportunity, um, if you're any kid in the United States or any person in the United States, you'd be crazy not to take it. So
Yeah.
I think it just plays into our hands of having that opportunity.
So this year, I mean, I don't know if you can answer this, but the Borough Cup, it looks like, will it happen this year or it's not going to happen?
Um, we were going back and forth just yesterday about what we could do going forward, and I'm kind of at the same mindset of when everything's lifted and restrictions are gone,
Yeah.
then we'll have a contingency plan maybe for the fall, maybe to have some kind of weekend type thing, but to have a season, have a 1 month program. Um, no, because major league teams, and I can't, even though I work with an organization, I can't ask them right now about, hey, listen, can we play? Like, right now we care about at the pro level. And we read the papers. We're all on the
Yeah.
same page with this.
Yes. Yeah.
I don't think anybody, no one, from the commissioner down to the kid in Little League doesn't know what's going to happen, in my opinion. But until everything really starts up, I say we just hold back and wait.
Yeah, absolutely. And do you, you're obviously a smart guy. Is that kind of your easing plan? Is there anything that, um, you think like the city could ease its way into kind of allowing kids to play, or you think it's just as soon as things get lifted, then that's when we start easing into kids playing?
I think you have to have that plan like that, and that's what most of these phone calls are about right now. Is I've spoken to CYOs, I've spoken to Little League, now I'll speak to the high schools today. I'm kind of taking all my notes and doing my due diligence first, and then kind of give suggestions. But we are forming a youth sports coalition, to kind of say, okay, how could we ease sports back in? And then when those phases come through, and I think if we look at the phases in New York City and New
Yeah.
York State, phase 4 is where we fall for sports. So when that time comes, as long as we have a plan in place, we'll be ready to go.
That's cool. That's cool. And I just think that the sooner kids could get out there and play, I'm sure your kid, your 13-year-old son, is probably going crazy climbing up the walls every day to play baseball outside, right?
I think it's yeah. He's utilized his time because he's getting ready for high school. Um,
Oh yeah, yeah,
eh, he's getting ready for high school, so getting him, and plus me being with him is I don't know if it's a blessing or a curse for him, but it's been where he does his schoolwork from the morning like normal, and then instead of having a lunchtime, we go outside and he hits in the driveway, and then he can eat lunch after and then we throw in the afternoon, and then at nighttime he does like basketball workouts and training for like 2 hours a night. So for him, it's working with him to make him understand. But yeah, is he missing it? 100%.
yeah, absolutely. So
My only fear, and this is something that we do fear with kids, not just my own son, but the kids now have seen that there's a way of staying connected during something like this.
mm,
What does that meant? That meant them jumping on PlayStations and playing the Fortnites, and you could play Fortnite with 20 kids who are your friends from school. So it doesn't mean you have to leave the house. And what I'm afraid of is some kids will remain in that when this ends and then not get back to a field. And that's one of the things that kind of scares me for the baseball point of view, is that we need to get these kids thinking about baseball more. And if you get a chance, um, I'm the vice president with the New York Pro Scouts Association, um, the Hot Stove League in New York, and we've been doing a lot of promotions and a lot of stuff. And you should check it out. It's at NY Pro Scouts. Check it out, and we can help you get someone on for you here. Like I have a bunch of scouts we can get on with you. But what we've
That's
been,
awesome, man.
yeah, what we've been doing is every day, Mondays and Thursdays, we do an Instagram live. We've
Mm.
had Bobby Valentine, John Franco. We have the sports writers. So the Scouts Association has been around for a long time, very long time. And the way scouts are going now, you have older scouts like Billy Blitzer from the Chicago Cubs. He and I, we work together very closely on this, and we want to know how kids show us how you play and post videos and stuff, and we're kind of keeping it fun to keep baseball on the front of people's minds. Not necessarily to get to be playing the game, but something that you do baseball related, just to keep the mind going. Because the more we don't play games,
Mm.
these don't play games, the further away they're going to go from it. So we have to really stay on top of that.
Yeah, absolutely. We did like a contest for March and April, and then part of May were like a hitting contest. We want to see you in the backyard hitting. We want to see you practicing, and we give away like a bundle of something just to kind of keep practicing that craft. But it's definitely been rough for kids. I think everybody's missing baseball and softball.
Right.
What is your involvement in Victory Sports? Because that's a sporting goods store.
Yeah.
And when did you get involved with that, and how did that happen? I want to give some love to everything you do. It seems like you do a lot, and I don't know if there's just one of you or if there's two of you, if they're going to clone you, because it seems like you're a busy guy.
Got to keep active. So about 3 years ago, Victory Sports was one of these locations on Staten Island, nostalgic place, been around for 50 something years. The owner of the store was going out of business, and then my wife and I decided to take a look at it, and then we decided that okay, it's a good opportunity. You just my wife, in terms of doing uniforms and trophies and stuff like that. She basically she's the boss of Victory Sports, not me. She's been the boss of Victory Sports, but going into this pandemic now, we're shifting gears a little bit. We're moving to victorygroupnyc.com, which is going to be our online stuff. So we're creating more of an online, platform to have a brick and mortar store today. This kind of killed us.
Hmm.
This kind of, because everything, and we all know this, us in the sports industry, and especially
Yeah,
selling, um, with no schools, no youth sports, nobody getting trophies and plaques. It's been really tough.
yeah. People keep
Yep.
asking us when we're going to open up, and we can't open up. Like, I mean, under like legal, we can't open up, but it's like there's no point for us to open up till people are out there playing and safely doing this thing. So
Right. And exactly, that's where our mindset is right now with that. So Victory Sports is going to continue, but in a different form, and it's going to shift to the online presence, and hopefully we will have some good success with it as time goes along, and then we go from there.
awesome, man. Well, I appreciate you hopping on with me. I learned a lot today. Anybody listening to this that wants to get involved with, a baseball organization, it sounds like you're the guy to talk to and stuff like that. And I'll put the links up to all that stuff. The Borough Cup sounds fascinating. I heard of it, and it just sounds like a really good time. One year, under normal circumstances, maybe next year, I'd love to go there and check it out actually live in person. So it sounds really cool. And one last question. If
Yeah.
they make a movie about your life, what actor is playing you?
What actors? Well, what age? What age
It
would I
doesn't.
be?
Oh, right
Right?
now, right
It
now,
has to
right
be.
now.
Right now, people have told me that if I do the face, I look like Robert De Niro, but I don't want Robert De Niro. I like Harry Connick Jr. Harry Connick's one of my favorite guys. I like him. Um, I want to be realistic too. So, Harry Connick would be pretty cool. He's funny. He likes baseball.
Awesome, man. Well, I appreciate it. And if you're ever in Jersey, stop in. I'd love to meet you face to face.
Sounds good, man. I appreciate it.
All right. Stay safe. All right.
Thanks, Max. Take care now.